Hello everybody and welcome to another top 5 board gaming video. Today is all about games that made the transition from analog to digital in a good, consistent way. Before I get started though, if you haven't done so already, please take a look at all my various social media pages as well as my Patreon page. On all of those, you'll be able to interact with myself and my channel in a whole bunch of really cool ways. So jumping right into it, this is a topic that I've discussed a decent amount over the years, where I've talked about the pros and cons of me personally and how I don't particularly enjoy games that go digital because I prefer sitting at a table actually playing the game and all that kind of stuff, and I view it as a bit of a cash grab by some of these companies and things along those lines. But that said, I wanted to do this video mainly because I gotta play some games solo. The biggest issue I've been having with games lately is that I just can't set up game nights, I can't go out to my friendly local game store to play and all that kind of thing. So being able to sit down and jump right into a digital game that I don't have to set up, shuffle cards and do all that kind of stuff, as well as play against an AI opponent, means that I can still feel like I'm playing a board game to an extent. So that said, the idea of this video is I wanted to talk about the games that I feel did that transition the best. It recreated the experience, for better or for worse, from the table to the computer, and at the same time offered a decent amount of challenge with a reasonable selection for an AI opponent, and made it make sense and made me feel like I was playing the game. But that said, as always, you guys know I love to hear from you. What are your personal opinions about this space? What do you like to look for in a digital game, if anything? Please let me know anything and everything in the comments below. But with that, we're going to get started with my number 5. At number 5, I've got Talisman, and by extension, the digital edition. The only reason that this game is on the list is because the digital edition does a good job of recreating the experience of playing Talisman, which is pretty bad. It's a huge grind, it's not very fun, and it's just brutal to play. But the digital edition really does a good job of it, and frankly, the AI is pretty decent, the multiplayer is relatively smooth, and you don't have a whole lot of errors. But the entire reason that it's so low on the list is because the game itself is just not that good. But the digital edition is a real good recreation of it. Talisman, my number 5. At number 4, I've got Scythe. This is a unique one amongst all of the digital transitions in that there are several versions of it. The main version that I'll be talking about, I believe, is just called the digital edition. There's also one on Tabletop Simulator, and there's also an RTS that was kickstarted not too long ago that'll be coming out soon if it's not already out. But that said, the main one, that is the digital edition of Scythe, is very, very well done. You have really nice, smooth animations, you've got decent matchmaking going on, and the AI is reasonably good. The problem is that there are a couple of flaws. It's kind of buggy, and the fact is that Scythe is one of those games where you really want to be at the table interacting with everybody and seeing what all is going on. The digital edition really doesn't give you that option, and so it can be a little bit frustrating. But the fact that it has a halfway decent AI for a reasonably strategic and heavy game, that alone puts it on this list pretty easily. Scythe, my number 4. At number 3, I've got Ticket to Ride. Now, Asmodee and Days of Wonder are probably the most prolific combination of publisher-distributor to be making IPs into digital forms. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but at the same time, a large portion of them are notoriously buggy and with really bad matchmaking and all that kind of thing. Ticket to Ride, for me personally, is much better than the rest. Now, most of these games I like to play solo. That's why I mention it specifically. And the solo game in the AI is really good in Ticket to Ride. Again, the animations, just like in Scythe, are very good, and you don't have to worry about picking factions or specific things. You can just dive right in, and everything is very smooth. There's relatively few bugs, and overall it works really well. When it comes to matchmaking, it's pretty decent and probably the least buggy, but at the same time, it's also not that great. It's not something that was superbly focused on for most of these games, but again, Ticket to Ride really rises above most of the others for this and is my number 3. At number 2, I've got Twilight Struggle. This is a relatively unique game in that it combines relatively heavy strategy alongside resource and card hand management, alongside territory control, and a whole bunch of other different stuff. And the fact is that the AI in this game really is good. There are a few minor bugs with it, but it does have some of the major strategic decision making that you see in human players. Things like saving the scoring rounds until the very best time, and saving all of the really bad add cards for the next one or space racing them, all of those kinds of things. The AI does it very, very well. On top of that, this game is notoriously difficult to get somebody to play with. It's one of my favorite games, but I have not played the analog version in a very long time. And the simple reason for that is because it's difficult to find somebody to play with. Having an AI opponent that I can play with at any time is wonderful. Not to mention the fact that I don't have to worry about setup or teardown, shuffling the cards, knowing when to do it, all of that kind of stuff. It makes everything a lot more efficient, and I personally have really not encountered any bugs. Twilight Struggle, my number 2. At number 1, I've got Evolution. This is a game that was relatively recently released on the digital market and frankly has been the best transition that I have ever seen. I love the fact that you have a little campaign mode that you go through with the digital edition, and on top of that, the idea is that the AI, it doesn't necessarily evolve, but the idea is that it uses different strategies. So you have one AI opponent style that uses a lot of carnivores, one that sticks to herbivores, and you can mix and match. You can have a more generalist one. On top of that, you can add on cards gradually from the base set. It's really wonderfully done, and I love how the digital game sort of introduces people and doesn't assume that you have played the analog version, which is something that a lot of the other games kind of lack, is a sort of tutorial to go on. That said, in addition, you also have a wonderful multiplayer mode that does decent matchmaking. You've got ranked battles and all of that kind of stuff that work reasonably well, but I personally am just a big fan of the campaign. I love the little animations. I love that it allows you to do certain things simultaneously, just like I would at an analog table, and I personally have not encountered any bugs or anything like that. A great game and a wonderful adaptation. Evolution, my number 1. Well, everybody, that's going to be it for me. I hope that you enjoyed this video on my top 5 favorite games that made the transition from analog to digital. And again, I know that this is a topic I've talked about before, but it's sort of come around a little bit just in the context of I really want to play a game, but there's nobody to play with. I don't have time to set it up or anything along those lines. And so I want to jump on the computer, play a little bit solo. And essentially, I like these games because they recreate that experience. Whatever it is that the game is, whether good or bad, I can feel something similar when I play on the computer. As always, though, once again, you guys know I love to hear from you, so please let me know any and all of your own thoughts in the comments below. But thank you so very much for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.